Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke typically every single week through news and headlines that do involve comic books. But this week we do have your latest interview from the comic book industry with Free Comic Book Day coming up. They are always a staple, a pillar of Free Comic Book Day. When I used to manage the comic shop, these were issues that I always appreciated, especially because there were original stories. There weren't always just reprints. Sometimes you'll see them from the big publishers. You get a reprinted story from a comic book that you already read, which I get. They're trying to appeal to the general non-readers, trying to get the kids and everything back into it. But I always appreciated that Udon Entertainment would typically have an original story for Free Comic Book Day, which made someone like me really appreciate the extra effort that goes into getting an original issue out there before you check out either the miniseries, the trade paperback coming out, the one-shot. And this week from Udon Entertainment, we have Matt Moylan, Director of Publishing. Welcome on, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we have a bunch of...
Yeah, this is our, I was going to say it's our 10th year doing Free Comic Book Day.
10 years of Free Comic Book Day. That's amazing. And you've been in the comic industry for over 15 years now as an editor, project manager, colorist. So how's it feel building up into Free Comic Book Day each year and making sure that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of those issues, because I've got them all, end up being original stories, right?
All the Udon Free Comic Book Day books have been original stories. There is one that was kind of a preview of a Street Fighter like anthology graphic novel we were doing. So there were short stories that hadn't been released yet, but they were meant to be part of like a bigger graphic novel later. It's always been something new. There's also one year where we did this story for a Japanese Street Fighter anthology, and it had never been released in English. So since it was all Udon art, we just translated it into English and released it in English for a Free Comic Book Day. But yeah, it's all stuff that you've never been able to buy before, so far anyway.
Well, for Free Comic Book Day this year, it does land on May 6th, which should be the first Saturday in May. I think we're back to regular Free Comic Book Day since the pandemic. And on that day, you can pick up at your local comic shop Street Fighter 6 number 0. So tell us a bit about this setup issue as it leads into the eventual number 1 and how it relates to the upcoming video game.
It's going to lead very quickly into number 1 because leads into a 4-issue miniseries that releases every week in May. Like the Wednesday after Free Comic Book Day is going to be Street Fighter number 1. So just like, what's that, like 4 days, 5 days? Mm-hmm. And then every Wednesday after that will be all 4 issues. And they are, besides the Free Comic Book Day issue, they're 48-page issues. They range from like 40 to 48 pages of actual story. I think the price is good for 48 pages. They're going to be $5.99. I think that's pretty good, like double-sized issues. As for the 0 issue is written partly by Capcom themselves, and we wanted to add some more characters in, so I wrote a short story myself too at the end. Nice. that added in some different characters.
Yeah, I saw that the rest of the issues were strictly, it looks like written by Capcom, probably following what they want leading into the plot for Street Fighter 6. And we've had people on from IDW when it relates to like Sonic the Hedgehog and other franchises. So how's it been on your end working with Capcom and making sure that the comic follows certain guidelines?
I think Capcom's pretty great to work with. Udon's been publishing the Street Fighter comics this will be our 20th year, 2023. So 20 years working with Capcom, because that's the first thing that we ever worked with them on was Street Fighter comics. They've been pretty good, and it's been 20 years, so we've dealt with a lot of, I guess, regimes, like different people in licensing. When we started, there wasn't even a North American licensing department, so we worked directly with Japan to license the comics. And when we started, it was before I was there. I've been at Udon for 15 years, and yeah, but Udon's been publishing the comics for 20. So I wasn't there right when they started, but when Udon started, there was no Street Fighter game. Like Street Fighter 3 was 7 or 8 years beforehand, I think. Wait, 7? Well, a few years beforehand. Capcom had no plans to make any more Street Fighter games at that time. That's one of the reasons it took. I've told this story before, but at that time, internally at Capcom, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike was considered to be like the perfect fighting game. And if you came and said let's do a Street Fighter 4, it's basically like, how dare you say Street Fighter 3 is not perfect? So it was, I think, 9 or 10 years between Street Fighter 3 and 4. there's a producer and group of people who worked on 4 and 5, and now there's a new producer and director working on Street Fighter 6. So, and if with a lot of Japanese video games, the producer is also like the brand manager. So they get to okay everything. So even if like someone's like, oh, I want to put Ryu in Fortnite, like, oh, you got to ask the producer if you're allowed to do that. So, but it's been pretty good. Once in a while, they tell us like, no, we don't think that's good for the brand. We wanted to have, at one point we thought of having Guile lose an arm in the storyline, and they said, don't think that's a good idea. It's kind of it's a real big taboo to have like a amputated or crippled person fighting sort of in Japan. It's one of the reasons we were told why, if you know the character of Oro from Street Fighter 3, he was kind of conceived to be a one-armed fighter, and they decided actually let's just make him, he has one arm tied behind his back because he's so good. So, but so sometimes they'll give us stuff like that, but they're usually pretty good. Lately, I guess because Street Fighter 6 is like on the horizon, they're very like tight, like making sure everybody's on model. So that's good to have. But yeah, they're pretty great to work with, I think.
That's good to hear because, as you were saying, there's a lot of brand protection that comes with a lot of these characters, and especially working with a company that's in a completely different region, there are going to be, like you mentioned, some things that would be like DC Comics, Marvel. You see people get amputated all the time. Like there's that ongoing joke of who's going to get amputated this week at DC, and it was happening. Like they'd lose an arm, they'd lose a leg. Yeah, you wouldn't even think that it would be culturally maybe something completely different somewhere else. So that's good that they're at least watching over that, so that when those books also get published over there, that there's no friction there or any licensing issues in the future with Udon or Street Fighter or anything like that. But that overall, it's still a very good balance from what it sounds like. And they're letting you tell the stories, do these amazing covers and amazing comic books. You haven't been there since the beginning, but what was your first experience with the Udon comic books, not just the Street Fighter ones, but them as a publisher?
The first time I heard of Udon was the Marvel Mangaverse comics.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
The very first set of them, Udon worked on the Avengers. I think it was called Avengers Assemble. I bought most of them at that time, and like, who are these Udon guys? They draw like Dreamwave. That's another company at the time, and it turns out Udon is all people who like quit Dreamwave. And so I didn't know that at that time, and also I didn't know that when very shortly after that too, I got my first comics industry job at Dreamwave. So at that time, that's when they had just picked up the Transformers license. So there was kind of a rivalry going between Dreamwave and Udon at that time that I learned about as I got more into working on projects and stuff. Udon was working on Taskmaster for Marvel, and so they blew up the Dreamwave offices in an issue of Taskmaster. And then Dreamwave's response was they put the chief of Udon, Eric Ko, in with a group of terrorists who were trying to buy the Transformers. So
oh wow!
It was like an issue of Transformers. So that was like a funny back and forth that was going for a bit. But yeah, that was the first time was Marvel Mangaverse, and then I bought the first issue of Street Fighter when it came out in 2003. And I didn't actually have much, a deep knowledge of Street Fighter at that time. I just kind of, I remember Chun-Li and Ryu and stuff, but I didn't have a super intense knowledge. And yeah, after 3 years working at Dreamwave, they went under, and not too long after that, I got a job at Udon.
Well, that's good. It ended up working out pretty well in the end for you, that you were able to transition over to Udon. I remember when, I picked up I still have all the old Street Fighter comics from #1, and going to the Udon booth at Wizard World Chicago at the time, and there were artists from Udon there. I had a blank cover drawn up. I had Evil Ryu's, what they labeled it as, drawn on there. Later on, I got it inked, and it was always something that I had on my subscription as they continued with Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and up till now, we're about to get Street Fighter 6. So it's just been great seeing, and everything in between too. The Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers miniseries that came out, I remember pushing that at the comic shop quite a bit because I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I like Darkstalkers. Anything Darkstalkers, I'm like, let's just get more of it. Let me support it with my dollar. Vote with my dollar. So anytime that, like recently the Morgan issue came out, and now we're about to have Felicia. So when I did work at the comic shop, I'm like, I'm gonna cross pull this. Let's make a slide for it. Let's post it. So it's always fun to see these characters still doing something outside of like a crossover series like Marvel vs. Capcom, where you'd see Morgan but now you get to see all these characters, and the same goes with Street Fighter. As you were saying, for years you wouldn't see the games coming out as regularly, or now Udon's doing a good job of keeping those characters still in the spotlight and keeping them relevant for gamers or collectors like myself, where I can read them year after year, pull out the collections. You guys do the great hardcovers and the compilations and the art books especially. And I just think it's great that Udon has this advantage of having these characters that look cool, they look great, they've got the sex appeal, they've got action, they've got all kinds of variations based on the games, and you're obviously taking advantage of that with the variants that are going to be available with issues 1 through 4, right?
We always do variant covers. I'll give you our standard breakdown for like a number one issue is we'll do a standard A and B cover, and then we'll do a blank sketch cover, and we'll have a retailer incentive cover, which is we keep it really low. We keep it at like 5-to-1 ordering. It's not like order 1,000, like whatever Marvel does.
Yeah.
It's usually just we're hoping like, oh, you're ordering 4, order 1 extra, and you can get this special cover. Besides that, we have 2 versions of a cover that we're selling just on the Udon store, and then the rest of the series just has like an A and a B cover, the 2, 3, 4. But it gives us a chance to like put a lot of different artists on things. For this series, we're doing the A covers are what we call the launch roster. So each cover has a group of characters who are part of the launch roster of the game. Might not necessarily relate to that issue story. Mm-hmm. And then the B covers are story covers that are specifically related to what's going on that issue.
And you can see a bunch of these variants in the latest previews catalog. If you go over to the Udon section, there's a bunch that are showcased on there. But you mentioned the Udon website, which I've gotten some exclusive variants from there before. What else do you offer as far as the exclusive variants and other things that you normally can't get at the local comic shop level?
Well, on the Udon store website, we do, like I said, that we always have an exclusive cover for most comics. We also sell merchandise for a lot of different IPs, for Street Fighter for sure, but things like t-shirts and pins and sometimes prints. We have what's really common these days is like a direct sales merch license, which means we can sell on our website, we can sell at conventions, but we can't distribute them to stores. Yeah, it's a lot of companies are licensing out merch that way, so they can license out to a few different companies. So you won't find these things in Walmart or in comic shops like our pins and our shirts, but you can check them out on the Udon store, or if you see us at a convention. We don't do a ton of conventions, but we do like San Diego Comic-Con and Anime Expo. I think we might be doing Otakon this year too. There's a lot of great stuff on the website. So not just for Street Fighter, but we have other licenses like Robotech. I'm going to look over my wall, see what we've got. We've got, of course, Darkstalkers. We've got the Persona books, which is Atlas's RPG game series. We've done a few other random things like we do Mega Man, we do Ghouls and Ghosts. We've done Neon Genesis Evangelion. And we've got actually more, I think probably next year we're going to be doing a lot more anime stuff.
Oh, okay.
So classic anime properties. So
well, that's exciting. Now's the time for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, manga's selling awesome for us. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. The comics are profitable for us right now, but it's the most expensive thing for the least return that we do. It's like the most work and the most money to put in to do comics. We also do manga. We do the art books. We'll always do comics, but we're never going to like try to become like a 10 comic a month publisher. We're just going to try to publish a few comics that we enjoy and that we can make sure keep the quality high on them.
Does the same kind of, I've seen this with Marvel and DC where it's almost the same exact thing where the comics aren't necessarily that profitable for them, or sometimes they'll even break even on them based on who's on the book and the print run itself, but that they try to push for the eventual profit when it comes to the trade paperback, the collections, the hardcovers. Do you find that the different hardcovers and Udon or trade paperbacks that Udon carries have a longer shelf life as far as people picking those? Because I see them on previews all the time where you'll solicit the collections, the compilations. Do those tend to have a longer shelf life for you guys?
Oh yeah, sure. We reprint stuff all the time. Like the first volume, say, of Street Fighter, like those first 6 issues that we did in 2000, that started in 2003, those have been printed in 4 different trade paperback like formats over the years. We did like a manga size trade. We did a regular comic size trade. We did what we called the Ultimate Edition, was like a soft cover phone book kind of a thing. And now our standard is to do the oversized hardcovers that are kind of art book size hardcovers. But yeah, we've reprinted a lot of those things over and over. We just did a second printing on the Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers hardcover. That's coming, and the regular also the regular Darkstalkers series hardcover. So both the Darkstalkers books are coming back in a few months. They'll be shipping from, that book is printing in China, I think. Yeah, so we've got a bunch of printers in many different countries. So.
Well, that's great too, because as you were mentioning earlier, the quality of printing that you put together, that Udon has all of these amazing roster of artists, inkers, colorists, and writers, of course. But the pages pop when you read the comic, and then when you guys reprint it in the oversized format, the hardcover. I have Darkstalkers at the oversized one because the comic is great and I have those too. But when that showed up in previews, I'm like, yeah, let me order that as well, and it translates really well to that oversized format because it does showcase the art so well. And I think if there were some public, I won't name any names, but if your artwork isn't up to par, then it doesn't really do as well in the long form when you're trying to showcase these pieces. And Udon does a great job of having these awesome interior artists that really are there. It's A-class. Everything is amazing on there. The variants, all of that stuff just looks great. And again, the characters lend themselves really well to the artists you pick up.
Well, thanks. We've usually tried to work with people who have kind of maybe an anime flair. We don't always specifically stick to this style, but the old Udon style, trying to go for an anime look, which was like cell cut characters against more detailed painted backgrounds. But we've got a lot of different types of artists who don't always work exactly that way. Our latest upcoming comic is Street Fighter Masters Cammy, which is coming out in about a month. And it is drawn by Alberto Albuquerque. He's done several Marvel comics. So he's like an American, hard lines artist, like style of an artist. But we've teamed him up with Espen Grundetjern, who's a longtime colorist who's worked with Udon. So it's kind of, one of our guys teaming up with more of an American artist, and it's looking pretty interesting. So yeah, we've done a few different styles, but the art, we've got awesome character designs to work with in the first place, right? So that always helps. Like the Street Fighter characters, most of them you can take off their outfits and dress them in something else, and they're still recognizable. It's not just a guy with brown hair, or and there's a lot of different body types and things like that. So it's great when you have an awesome source material to work with.
Right, even base level. If you were to just use the different variations on the costumes throughout the different games, you could do variant covers for years on just like Cammy alone. Like you'd be just fine. And it's just an amazing advantage that you have for sure. I do want to cover a little inside baseball here, as you were mentioning some of the upcoming projects. More recently there's been some Darkstalkers content. How does the company go about choosing what they want to go with as far as the next book or the next property or the next character to use? Do you go by what stories are available if a writer has a story, or do you typically have a theme as you go throughout the year?
Well, it's been different over time. In the recent years, like basically when the pandemic started, we were kind of on like let's just take a little break and catch our breath and work on some other projects that aren't comics and just do a really small amount of comics this year. And when the pandemic hit, we were like, okay, comics are on hold because we don't know, and when the whole comic shop industry shut down and Diamond shut down for a bit, we were kind of lucky that we were in a good place to handle that and just not take any more risks on comics until that was sort of evened out. But we've slowly built back up doing more comics the last couple of years. And this year's going to be a huge, at least for Udon, we're doing about 10 issues this year. Of various things, and we brought on a new editor, Marshall Dillon. He worked with Udon in the past as a letterer, and he's been working at a few other publishers since then. And we brought him on full time to mainly take charge of the comics portion, so that we can do more. So he's right now he's heading up our Darkstalkers comics and heavily involved in the Street Fighter comics, and with me working with him. So this year we're going to do. I already mentioned Cammy. After that, we're doing the Felicia one-shot with Tim Seeley drawing it, and the artist is Tobio Rogers. And that one is just, we thought, let's try some different guys who haven't worked with Udon before and see what they could add creatively. Kensu Chong is like the main writer who's written both Street Fighter and Darkstalkers over the years. He's gotten pretty busy. He's also a teacher, so he'll still always write a few things for us, but we're trying out some different guys right now.
Yeah, that's something I noticed when I saw the Felicia solicitations. I'm like, Tim Seeley from Nightwing. Like he does normal the big two comic books. And I don't think I had seen yet any writers from DC or Marvel that I remember on Udon books. It tended to be kind of like an art house group, which was great. But this was kind of like, wow, this is a little like that's a quote unquote mainstream name, right?
Yeah, honestly, most of the people who have written for the Street Fighter and Darkstalkers comics have been. I don't think we've ever really hired a person to be the main writer who their job is to be a writer, like they're sold. It's usually people who write on the side or have several projects going or something like that. So yeah, Tim is like a writer that we hired. That's what he does. And he's very professional and got the script done in super good time. So that's great. And we'll definitely be doing some more stuff with him after this. But yeah, the Felicia. So I don't know, in terms of where we decide to go with content, I mean, it depends. If there's a game coming up, do we want to have some relation to the game? Or do we want to, if Capcom announces a new character or we know there's a new character coming up, we want to put them front and center. So it really decides what's happened with the property. Darkstalkers, hasn't been anything happening with the property for years and years. So we kind of do what we want. This current series, starting with the Morgan one shot last year, Felicia this year, there'll be another one shot in the fall, and we're going to try to keep it to about 2 Darkstalkers books a year for a bit.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they're all going to be seemingly not super connected, but by the time you get to the end of them, there'll be a lot of connections. So yeah, each one shot just focusing on a different character, and you'll get another piece of a backstory of something else big going on. And hopefully you can kind of build that up into more of a regular ongoing thing, just like Street Fighter. On the Street Fighter side, our current plan is to do a quarterly Street Fighter project.
Okay.
We've got Cammy is the first one coming up next, and then Street Fighter 6 kind of fills the quarterly project slot, and then we'll have another project in the summer and one in the fall.
That's great news. As a Darkstalkers fan, as a Street Fighter, that this is coming out more regularly. That's amazing news. I know you said you had cut down a little bit on the convention circuit. For Free Comic Book Day itself, obviously the book's going to be everywhere. Are you going to be doing anything locally that any local brokettes can visit or tune in?
My personal plan is to I think I'll do a signing at my local shop, which is Fun Zone Comics in Barrie, Ontario.
All right.
So I usually do something with them because I last couple of years I've been taking on writing the Free Comic Book Day special myself, just because it's kind of a complicated thing to get done on time. So I'll just write it. They don't have to manage somebody to write it. So yeah. So like I was saying before, this year we did this Free Comic Book Day issue is a main story written by Capcom. I think a few people worked on it, so they don't give us the specific credits of who the main. So they just want to say that the Capcom team wrote it. And the main story is going to focus on Luke. Showed up at the very end of Street Fighter 5, but he's like taking center stage in Street Fighter 6. He's an ex-military guy who now works in like private security and is also like an MMA. So we'll get to know him better. It's kind of a detective story, so it's something a little bit different for Street Fighter. And then the story I added as a bonus short story is Jury versus Kimberly. Kimberly is the new graffiti ninja character from Street Fighter 6.
It's all really exciting with issue number 0. And I will give a suggestion to anyone out there that is considering picking up let's say that you just pick up issue 1. And I always told this to my subscribers at the shop since this is a weekly, comic shops need to order these comics ahead of time. They don't just order number 1 and then, okay, for next week, I'm going to get number 2. The month's orders go in. Like, yeah, there's weekly final order cutoffs. But for the most part, if you want issues 1 through 4 of Street Fighter 6, and that goes for any weekly comic series, make sure to add it to your subscription, because comic shop may order, let's say, 40 copies of number 1. They're not necessarily going to order 40 copies of number 2. I know this from experience. Some people just pick up the number 1s and then you never see them again. So you go down on number 2. But if you want issues 1 through 4 guaranteed, or even that Free Comic Book Day issue, make sure to let your local comic shop know. Let them know to add it to your subscription. Some comic shops will let you just add 1 title to your sub. If you don't have a regular subscription, but you're a big Street Fighter person or Capcom, tell them, hey, when these 4 issues come out, can you put them aside for me? That will help them out in their ordering. It'll help Udon out as far as moving some more books, and it'll help out you as the reader or the collector in making sure you don't miss an issue. So just want to put that out there for anyone, especially with weekly issues. Do not wait. Get it on your subscription as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's a new release format for us. We haven't tried a weekly series before, but Capcom really wanted us to get all this out. It's timed so that it's really timed between Free Comic Book Day and the release of the game on June 2nd. There's Free Comic Book Day and then an issue every week. And after issue 4, at the end of May, Street Fighter 6 releases on June 2nd. The story for the series ties into the game, so it's a great setup. I won't give too many spoilers, but basically if you've seen Ken in Street Fighter 6, he's looking a little disheveled.
Mm-hmm.
he's gotten the nickname like Hobo Ken a few times. You'll find out why his official character profile says like he's on the run from the law for something that happened, and so you'll find out why he's on the run, and he's become separated from his family. He can't see them right now. So how that all happened, you'll find out in this series.
Very good. And I do have to ask, have you played Street Fighter 6 ahead of time? And do you have a favorite new character or a favorite new iteration of an existing character?
I haven't played it yet. A few of the Udon guys have. They got in on the beta.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess we could have probably bugged Capcom and they would have let us in. But personally, I'm more into the lore and the characters than actually the gameplay. Like I play and I always pick Ryu just to play. Just in terms of like new characters, Kimberly's really cool as like a generational character because she's kind of like Sakura to Ryu.
Okay.
She's like Sakura's Ryu's kind of reluctance. He's reluctant in taking her on as a student, but like, okay, whatever, I'll teach you. So she's kind of the same way with Guy from Final Fight from Street Fighter Alpha. So she's like I want to be a Bushin Ryu ninja. He's like, oh, okay, fine. So that'll be fun. And I really like some of the other new character designs. Like Cammy is really cool.
Yes.
The first time she doesn't have braids anymore. She's got a cool short haircut, but they've still given her, I don't know if you noticed, her jacket has these long sort of belts on it that kind of still flip around like the braids.
Oh, okay.
So that's cool.
Yeah, that's a design that took off online. Like all these artists immediately started doing fan art of her.
Oh yeah, the character designs are great. Usually you don't like some of these other like Mortal Kombat or Soul Calibur where they change the character design every game. You're like, oh, but the character's not iconic anymore. People want the class, but Capcom did a really good job this time, making them kind of, I don't know, they're very fashionable and interesting looking. And I'm sure every character, you can guarantee they'll have an alternate classic costume. You want them to look like classic guys.
Exactly, yeah. And that was something I was even saying on Twitter with some of the worry about the character reveals. And it's like, they're going to release the classics anyway. Like, just choose that when the game comes out. What's the big deal?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Cammy by the end, I don't know how long it'll take them, but at some point you'll be able to play as Street Fighter 2 Cammy and Street Fighter Alpha Cammy and whatever.
Of course. And that'll be great. Well, this is really exciting for Udon, and congratulations on getting this weekly series leading up to the big release of the game. And Matt, I do want you to let the Brocat Core know out there where they can find you if they want to continue the conversation on Street Fighter 6, on Udon Publishing, on some more of the books. And once again, where they can find Udon comics, books, trades, manga, all that stuff.
Wait, before I do my plug, I'll give one more project though.
Please.
In April, we've also got Street Fighter Origins Sagat coming out.
Ooh,
which
okay.
is an original graphic novel. It's about 100 pages of story. It is a spiritual sequel to a book we did 10 years ago, which was Street Fighter Origins Akuma. So just like that book, this is written by Chris Saraceni and drawn by Joe Ng and colors by Espen Grundetjern again. Like these, we just try to look into the character's past and figure out how they became the character they are. So Akuma was a little simpler. That how did he become this dark figure? You could only really say that, well, he was kind of always that way. But Sagat is a more complicated guy because we know, he starts off because a villain obsessed with Ryu having defeated him, he wants revenge, he wants another match with him, to over the years kind of chilling out and becoming he's not a hero character, but he's not a villain anymore.
Right.
He's just accepted. He's not obsessed with Ryu anymore, and he'll help out if you need it, if there's some world shaking stuff. So we kind of want to figure out what kind of a person could make that change could happen to him. We've also got a lot of lore deep cameos in this, like people's as Ryu Sagat participates in what we call the Tournament of the Elite, so something that predates the Street Fighter tournament. And there's a lot of older characters when they were young and parents of characters that you know. And the Street Fighter lore is actually pretty deep, so a lot of these characters already exist, and we just haven't seen them before in much detail. So that's going to be really fun. But yeah, that's coming out in April, and it's already at our distributor, so there's not going to be any delays with it.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw it in the solicitation, and maybe I didn't take a deep enough look when I was going through previews, but I assumed that it was those issues that you were talking about where he fights Ryu and ends up, from what I remember, he ends up defeating him, but not in a way of like, he's like, no, this isn't the way I want to beat you. You're not at your strongest. And I'm like, maybe that's the story of Sagat, but that's great that you're saying that it's all original content, because as soon as we're done here, I got to email my local comic shop and let them know to order that for me, because so far I'm caught up on the Udon Street Fighter stuff, except for that. So I'm glad you mentioned it.
Well, yeah, one of the main questions we wanted to answer with this book is when Ryu defeats Sagat, why that broke him so bad. Mm-hmm. So you'll figure out, you'll kind of get a sense of, oh, this is why he was so like shattered by that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a great, awesome, oversized hardcover book. Otherwise, if I get back to some plugs, I'm Lil Formers on Twitter, LILFORMERS. And, I post about Street Fighter stuff. I post about my own, little robot drawings. I post about why this new cartoon looks dumb, whatever.
I saw your latest take on the Turtles too, more recently.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's not for me. I don't feel it's really for anybody, but
I'm with you. That's exactly what I said on last week's show. I'm like, you know what? I'm not the audience, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely, they're skewing probably younger than the Turtles, like a main Turtles thing has ever skewed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we'll see. If it makes money, then it was the right move, I guess.
Right. Or if not, like I was telling my buddy, I'm like, Turtles get rebooted all the time. Like it'll be, if you don't like this one, there'll be another one rebooted at some point. There'll be a new cartoon, new designs. They show up all the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, my Turtles is one of the more obscure ones. My favorite Turtles is the Archery Adventure Series Ninja Turtles comics.
Oh, wow.
Sort of based on the cartoon at the beginning, and then they went their own way. Mm-hmm. They had tons of super environmental messages, like almost every issue. But yeah, I love those comics. Udon in general, most of our things are Udon Ent, like for Udon Entertainment. But you can find us on Twitter. It's not hard to find us. On Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We have our own Discord where you can chat with other fans about stuff. So yeah, not hard to find us there. And Udon Books, I mean, we sell our comics at, any comic store can order them for you. Our Diamond is our exclusive distributor for comic shops and also to other markets too. You can get our hardcover books and art books and manga, also through your comic store. If you ask, sometimes they don't always order like the $60 books at every shop, but if you ask, I'm sure they'll order it for you. Mainly our big books are available on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble is really fighting with Amazon right now to become our number one customer for manga. Ooh. They're doing very well. I think it was the pandemic that Amazon had to become the place to buy everything. And they kind of let books slide a little bit, and Barnes & Noble just like, let's become the best bookstore. And they did, I think. So
well, that's great. As an ex-comic manager, I'm rooting for Barnes & Noble on this one. Amazon was the big bad back in the day.
I don't know exactly what it is, but they figured out their ordering policy. Like, I think they went to like, they have like tiers of stores, and like these stores will order 1 copy, and these will order 3, and these will order 10. And then it's just worked out for them. So it's something along those lines. They've just done really well, especially with manga. They even done several exclusive variant covers with us.
Oh wow!
For our manga.
That's great.
So, yeah, that's awesome. And they've sold out. They haven't been stuck. Like, it's not like they've been stuck with them. Like sometimes when you do, a retailer exclusive, it's like some publishers like, haha, we tricked you into ordering 10,000, but they're selling well, so that's great.
Very good. Yeah, there will be links to everywhere you can find Udon and Matt in the description of today's episode. So if you're driving, come on back and check out the description of this episode, and you will find the links everywhere on there. And of course, we will share them as well on our social media. Once again, be sure to, as always, support your local comic shop and make sure to show up for Free Comic Book Day. If you can't make it that day, ask your comic shop for any leftover comic books the next day, and be sure that one of them is Street Fighter 6 number 0. And if you want 1 through 4, don't wait, add it to your shop. Do not assume that it'll be there on the shelves every week. Get it on a pull list, and they will then order it up for you. So the first issue is out, as you mentioned, the next new comic book day. So that'd be the next Wednesday on May 10th. That's when issue number 1 kicks off. So you still have some time to get into your comic shop and let them know to order it. The final order cutoff hasn't happened yet, but it will be coming up here in, I think, in about a month, if not less. So make sure to let your local comic shop know as soon as you can. But Matt, I want to thank you once again for being on and helping to talk more about Udon, something that's been a part of my comic collecting life for ever since I started collecting comic books. So huge thanks for doing an awesome job over at Udon, getting some great comic books out there, quality printing, quality art on there. And I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. This has been fun.
And to you on the other side, thank you for joining us on this special interview. As always, you can find us at thereasonsimbroke.com. Huge thanks to you for joining us, to Matt, everyone at Udon, and Brokehead Core. All will be well. Elder Ring. So you're saying Elder Ring, that's one of the biggest video games of recent years, and Udon's involved in it as well?
Yeah, Udon has published the English editions of Japanese art books for all 3 Dark Souls games and Bloodborne. Oh gosh, the people are going to be mad. The director of the games, his name escapes me, but his newest game is Elden Ring, of course. So they're like a spiritual trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. The three IPs, and Udon's publishing the English edition of Elden Ring as well, and they are getting some huge pre-orders. I checked today, and they were number 159. The first volume. It's a two book set. It's like 800 pages altogether, and the first book is number 159 of all Amazon books.
Wow!
So at the moment, so that's pretty cool. We're number 1 in video game art books and number 1 in pop culture art books.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's cool to be fighting for the top slot with like Zelda and
Sure.
Harry Potter and Final Fantasy in like the video game category. So we're really proud to do those. I'd like get your pre-orders in early because they might sell out right away. We're gonna do like an instant reprint, but the first batch will probably sell out right away.
Yeah, if you want that first printing, don't wait. Absolutely. Because I'm assuming you just like most publishers, you'll mark the second printings with either on the publishing side something, or will there be like a different cover, that kind of thing?
Occasionally we do a different cover, but most of our books, like a regular book, we just on the Indicia page, it'll say like second printing, October 2023. So I think we just did a reprint of Dark Souls, the first Dark Souls art book. That's 9th printing.
Wow. So, congrats.
Yeah, so they do pretty well.
Great. Anything else video game related or art book related that you wanted to throw in there as well while we're at it?
So much stuff. We've got new Persona manga coming out through the year, Persona 4 Arena, Persona 5 Comic a la carte, which is like an anthology manga. We've got the Record of Lotus War, Crown of the Covenant manga, which is a sequel to the original Lotus War from back in the day by the original author. That's starting in a couple months. So we've got all kinds of things coming.
Great. Yeah, get it all in there.